fireside chat, we might think of it. I actually am by a fire. I got a fire over there. So I'm having a fireside chat, even though you can't really see it. So, but pretend, enjoy the fire. Come and sit with me while we discuss things psychological, mental health, personal development, and how we work. And as I say, my name is Phil Naylor, and I'm a therapist. And I'm offering these weekly talks just as my way of, uh, I guess, putting my ideas out there in the world for people, because I don't think that there is a lot of good comprehensive information provided health and how we work. There's lots of bits and pieces out there, but when I see people, nobody's kind of really explained the big picture of and how understanding that is going to help you kind of move forward and solve some of your problems, some with your own tools and some with some support and assistance. But mental health has become kind of a bit of a complicated subject, or kind of mysterious, or there's not a lot of information given about that. So I want to kind of demystify stuff and just clarify things, and make information just available for anybody. So just to clarify, uh, this is it's not therapy. Just clarify that way. This is not me giving you therapy. It's providing information and education, and these opinions are formulated from, distilled from my years of experience and years of trainings from different perspectives, and it's put together in a way that I found works for me, and it helps works for the people I work with to understand things, and so that they can work with their issues quickly, and empowers them to work with those things as well. So this is my opinion. I guess I don't represent sort of all psychotherapy and all psychotherapeutic views. But having said that, why don't we settle into today's topic? So we're continuing on from last week, and this is part about understanding ourselves, not focusing on a particular issue. We've talked about things like self-care, or negative self-talk. We've talked about anxiety. And now we're talking about how does our kind of psychological self work. And last week we started on the topic of the unconscious mind, the conscious versus the unconscious mind, which is really a construct. It's a way of understanding. It's a way of thinking about ourselves that makes it easier to comprehend. It's not, you can't kind of sort of do a brain scan and point to, oh, that part of the brain is the conscious part, and those parts of the unconscious part. It doesn't really work like that. The brain's kind of all integrated. And as much as people like to kind of almost say as if we understand all the parts of the brain and how they all relate to how they work, we really don't know that much about the brain and how it works. And we talk about left brain and right brain and all that. And there's some generalities that can be made, but there's a lot that we don't understand. And there's a lot of integrative functions within the brain that we don't understand. There's even controversy about, is our consciousness generated by the brain? I actually fall into the school of, we don't generate our consciousness from our brain. I kind of think that our brain is kind of more like a receiver, sort of like it's a way that processes energy, just like we might say a computer doesn't generate the programs that it runs. It doesn't generate the software. So the hardware of the computer doesn't actually produce that. It doesn't come out of the hardware. Its software is put into the computer, and then it's run through the hardware. So that I kind of come from that, but that's kind of another subject for a day. So in the meantime, let's just talk about consciousness and unconsciousness. Like I say, it's a way of understanding. And what we talked about last week was simply putting in terms of what we're aware of and what we're not aware of. So our conscious mind is what we're aware of, our field of awareness of at any given time. Whereas the unconscious is everything that we're not aware of, which is a whole bunch of stuff. So we're not aware of our physiological processes. A lot of them. There's, we can't sense how our liver's working. We can't direct it. We can't, change how our kidneys are processing stuff. That's all just kind of running in the background on automatic. And same with our psychological processes, that we have certain psychological processes that just run kind of on automatic. And it's largely a subconscious is a storage place, just like a hard drive of a computer. It stores information like memories. And it also stores programs, like things that we learn. We talked about if we learn how to read, then we have a reading program. We don't have to consciously be aware how to read something after that. And anything that we learn, first we kind of spend some directed, focused time consciously learning that thing. And that kind of goes into the background and becomes part of our automatic system. So, the fact that we speak a language, we don't have to think about how we speak our native language. If you're learning a new language, you have to think about it a lot. And people that go to another country and start to kind of integrate into that new language, they actually start to think in that same new language. It becomes unconscious. So life easy are things in our unconscious that just run automatically. And we gave the analogy last time of the captain and the crew of a cruise ship. The captain being like the conscious mind. It doesn't actually do all the functions of what the crew does on the cruise ship. The captain just sort of says, this is what the itinerary is going to be. This is direction we're heading. This is what we're going to do today. These are the new plans. If there's any changes, they kind of announce them. But he expects the crew to carry them out. It's a crew that kind of cooks the food and runs the activities and does all the mechanics of the ship and all that kind of stuff. So the captain can't do all that. It just directs. And our conscious mind does the same thing. So our conscious mind is that which we kind of think of as us. It's when we wake up in the morning and we look around and say, oh, what's going on today? How am I feeling today? Oh, what do I have on my agenda? I got that thing I got to do. I got to go to work today. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to go brush my teeth. I'm going to get ready for work. And I got to think about that thing I got to fix. And maybe I'll give Sally a call because I want to see her after work, whatever. So it's the brain that's deciding and scanning what our environment is and making decisions about what we're going to do. And we kind of think of that as us, of kind of who we are. That's our conscious awareness is kind of mostly like our personality and what we do and things like that. Whereas the unconscious is it's that which is outside of our awareness. Where am I here? Okay, so our unconscious mind is the programs that make things happen. So even when we walk, if I say, I'm going to go up and get across the room, we're not consciously aware of all the muscle groups and everything that are running in order for us to do that. So our conscious mind is got all these little programs that it's running and is running. Say, we've got to get in the car. So, okay, I'm picking up the car keys. I'm going to get the car program running when I jump in that seat so that we can get going. And it is running a whole bunch of things at once, whereas our conscious mind kind of thinks of one thing at a time. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And even though we think that when we multitask, we're just doing a bunch of things individually fast, copying from one thing to the other, because our conscious mind can only retain a certain amount of information at once. There's only so many things that can hold in its attention because it needs to be focused, and it uses a kind of analytical, rational, problem-solving approach to what we need to do, whereas the unconscious mind doesn't really have that faculty. It just says, I got to do this. I'm going to launch that program to run it. I'm going to have this response. And it's able to access the programs and resources as we need them. And it's also, so it's running in behind the scenes. And, we tend to think of the unconscious mind as being irrational, but it's not really irrational. It just doesn't use an analytical, logical, or not logical, but a rational kind of problem solving, sorting a bunch of variables. It has a very simple logic. It has an if-then kind of logic, a cause and effect kind of logic. And that's how when you think about it, how we learn. We learn that, if we grab the doorknob and turn it, the door opens. So as we're children, we're busy gathering all this information about if we do this, then this thing happens. If we do that, then the other things happen. And we kind of get all these strings of logic, understanding, oh, this is the cause and effect of how these work. So now if, we understand if I turn on the tap, the water is going to come out. If I put the kettle under the water, it's going to fill the kettle. And if I put the kettle on the stove and then I turn the stove on, then the water is going to heat the water, and then I can make some tea. So we have this sequence of logic that it follows. And so we understand how the world works. So it figures out how the world put together. So our unconscious mind kind of understands all these sequences. It's busy learning how all this stuff works and all fits together, so it can kind of easily navigate through the world. The other thing is that it's a pattern matcher. Our unconscious likes to categorize things. So, and it's also how it makes it easy for us to navigate in the world. We need to know, what things are food, and these things you can eat, those things you can't. And food goes into subcategories like vegetables and meat. It knows about what food is and what the category of the food is, or it knows animals and what categories of animals are. They're different than people, and they know friendly animals versus unfriendly animals and things like that. It likes to categorize things and group things together. And it also stores and matches experiences. So it says, we had this certain experience before, and we're having another experience that's sort of like this other experience. So that was a pleasant experience, and I like this experience. I like doing it. I like going to the cottage, and that's a nice experience. And then I say, when I'm at the cottage, and that's nice. And then we kind of get all these associations about what we like about the cottage, but also for other things too. What I don't like, I had this experience and I didn't like that. And it stores that, and it looks for other experiences that might kind of similarly fit in that category. So we talked earlier about the whole concept of the bear and, the bear in the woods, and that activates our fight-flight system. This is when we were talking about anxiety. But then that experience is remembered. It's kind of like a little trauma that the unconscious mind remembers. And this is why trauma becomes kind of important later on. So we get these little scary traumatic experiences, like we had a bear encounter, and our brains go, I don't like that bear thing. And then anytime that we're, in a similar environment, it says, it reminds me of the bear, and you're going to kind of get, kind of agitated. And then it stores that experience. And then if it encounters another experience, it says, this kind of has similar features. There's a dog that's barking at me, and it's coming at me, and that kind of reminds me like the bear was coming at me. So that experience is like this experience, and it just kind of puts them together, and it's like, so it categorizes safe and dangerous. That's one of the big things that the unconscious mind categorizes is safe and dangerous. And it's particularly concerned with safe and with safety, and concerned with what's dangerous, what's unsafe. So our conscious mind is constantly scanning the environment for, things that we've got to look out for, to be aware of, there's something in the way, look out at that. And it sort of stores old experiences so that it compare against new experiences and say, which category does this fit in? So does this fit into the bear category? I don't like that. And then it says, this thing that's happening now, this dog that's running at me reminds me of the bear, so I'm going to put that together, and so I'm going to have this scared kind of thing. So dogs and bears are kind of in the same general category. And so it's that pattern matching that is, again, has a positive function, because we need to know fast and put things into unsafe categories, safe versus unsafe categories fastly. That helps us to bring our attention to things that we need to be aware of to keep us safe. But it also can get in the way, because our unconscious mind picks up little signals. Maybe say we get hypervigilant if a little signal that says, And maybe there's a dog barking in the distance if we've got kind of a fear of dogs, and it notices that, and all of a sudden creates a little bit of, oh, there's something unsafe in our environment. So now it does this very fast. The two other distinctions I want to make between conscious and unconscious mind is that comparatively speaking, our conscious mind is very slow. It's got to think about things. Even if it's, thinking in kind of split seconds, that compares to the kind of nanoseconds that our unconscious mind kind of processes information. So we may need to think, what am I going to do today? Let's see, I could do this and I could do that, or this is coming up, and I need to get the groceries tonight. And so our conscious mind is kind of doing this. So it doesn't always figure things out very quickly in terms of what it needs to know in our environment. Our unconscious mind is scanning the environment all the time. It's picking up these signals really quickly, and it draws these if-then logic strings together, and then runs to a conclusion. So we may find ourselves all of a sudden becoming anxious about something, and we're not aware of why. So let me give you an example. If say, somebody has some certain social anxieties, maybe they don't even have that social anxiety. Say they get an invitation to a work party or an event, and all of a sudden they become anxious. And it's like, why am I anxious? They may have to think about that a little bit. They just feel this kind of anxiety. Got invited to this party, think about this party. Why am I so anxious about this party? And then they start to think, well, these people are there. I don't know them very well. And, they don't know what I'm like outside of work. And then, maybe all aren't going to like me, or they can judge me. And I remember being in this other situation, where I was at this party and I was all kind of isolated, feeling weird and didn't fit in with everybody. And so then you start thinking, if you start to kind of analyze, why am I feeling uncomfortable? Why am I anxious about the party? Our mind starts to follow that path as you think about it, and you can start to say, oh, this is the drill down method that I will call it, that we drill down onto, why does that make me anxious? So if it's like, okay, why does it make me anxious that people are going to, not know who I am, and while they might judge me, and okay, what if they do judge you? Well, then I'm going to feel inferior, right? Like not good enough. Oh, that might be it. Oh, and what if you are not good enough? Then, well, I'm going to feel like a failure. I'm going to feel like a failure around them and not good enough. And I'm going to be isolated and alone, and nobody would want to be having to do with me. And so you kind of arrive at, oh, that's why it's bugging me. I'm afraid to go to this party because I kind of think about how that might turn out. And based on past experiences, and if you have already this propensity to be sensitive to being not good enough, or to a sense of failure, all of a sudden you realize that the implications of this party are that you could go there, it doesn't go the way you need, and you're going to have this experience of feeling like a failure, and nobody likes you. And so now it took your conscious mind a little bit of process to do that. And you actually have to do that process to figure it out. Some people won't do that. They just, I have no idea. I'm anxious about this party. I'm just anxious. I don't know why. And when I think about that party, I get anxious. You actually have to follow your conscious logic down to that, what they call drilling down to the core fear, the core issue that's there. So that's what our conscious mind does. But however, our unconscious mind didn't take any time at all to do that. It does that like instantly. It goes, yeah, party, other parties, those weren't good. That reminds me, isolated. What if I fail? What if I did? Oh, it's failure alone. So, but it does that like in a nanosecond. It says party, failure. Party, you're going to feel like a failure. It's a threat. Like party's a threat. You feel like a failure. It says, I don't like that failure feeling, and so it rises up this emotion. So our emotions tend to come out of our unconscious. It just conjures those emotions. That's how it communicates with our conscious mind. Oh, I like this. Oh, I don't like that. So it gives us the anxiety. It's a big signal. It says danger, danger. And so our unconscious mind has already made that decision. It heard party. What does that mean? If this, then that, then it does that like in a split second, and it's already arrived at the conclusion that you're going to feel like a failure if you go to this party. And then you've got this anxiety that happened right below your conscious awareness. And so that's kind of how our conscious and unconscious mind works. So if you think about the captain and crew analogy, you know, the crew remembers all these things. Maybe it had, you know, there was an experience once when it almost got, they almost hit an iceberg and got something of icebergs. And so the captain's going, and they know, he says, oh, there's an iceberg over there, but we're heading over there, keep going. And the crew goes, iceberg? I remember when that last happened. And then it starts to freak out because it doesn't rationally problem solve. It doesn't know what the captain knows about going on. It just says, iceberg. We don't want no icebergs. And so the captain all of a sudden has this freaking out crew. And the crew doesn't want to go. The crew wants to turn the ship around and go. And the captain's going, what's the matter with you? It's just icebergs over there. We're just going over here. We just keep going. The crew's going, no, there's an iceberg. There's icebergs. Icebergs are scary. We don't want to go iceberg. Turn the crew around. So this is what happens internally to us, you know? So we have, if the captain simply just says, that's crazy, just keep going, that doesn't satisfy the crew. The crew says, no, there's icebergs, we die in icebergs. You know, that crew, our boats hit icebergs and we can't see the icebergs underneath, and we're gonna we're gonna drown, so this is what the crew is doing, even though the captain knows more about, you know, what the plan is, and that, no, we're going to sail right around the iceberg and we're going to, you know, arrive safely at our destination. And so if there's not a good communication between our conscious and unconscious mind, if our conscious mind just says, that's stupid that you're doing that, well, that's not satisfying to the unconscious mind. And that's why it's not helpful when we're feeling afraid of something that our conscious, I shouldn't be afraid of this. What's the matter with you? Why don't you just, so there has to be an interaction between the conscious and unconscious mind. And in a kind of one way of doing it is that the conscious has to really think through and kind of almost make it clear about what the plan is. No, if you understand about icebergs, you know, the iceberg is only this wide and we're going, you know, 5 times wider than the iceberg is to go around it, and we're going to our destination, and we're going to be over there, and we'll have no problem with the iceberg whatsoever. So if the conscious mind takes some time to really work with the unconscious and alleviate the fears, then even when then they'll be more cooperative. And even though the ship is kind of, you know, taking the detour, the crew's going to be tense. It's like, okay, the captain says we're going to be okay, and he explained why, but I'm going to keep my eye on the iceberg. I'm a little bit tense about it. And then once it gets past, it goes, phew, okay, all right, we did that. Yeah, no, we'll chalk that to a positive experience, okay? Icebergs at a distance are safe. And now we know if you just give them enough leeway, then we're okay. And that's sort of how the interaction of our conscious and unconscious mind works. So sometimes they seem at odds with each other, and our captain's directing it to do this, and then we have this reaction going on that's putting resistance in, and our fears are always going to override our law. So when we work with the unconscious, which is a lot of all kinds of things are happening that cause depression. There's thought processes that are going on behind the scenes that are causing depression and anxiety and all kinds of distorted thoughts and thinking. And it's creating the awareness again. Part of therapy is creating awareness of what is in the unconscious and to address that consciously. And so part of our job is to understand why is the crew reacting anxiously, and then start to address that in a way. So because once we're aware of the thing, we can start to address what the issue is. So we have 2 parts of our mind that function kind of differently. One is, you know, uses a whole lot of data, is really just kind of operating on an if-then logic and just pattern matches. This thing that's happening now is like that bad thing that happened there, and it induces an emotional response. Whereas our conscious mind is just focusing on planning, rational, analytical thought, and directing what we're going to do. And our unconscious processes are designed to keep things running as smoothly as possible and to keep us safe. So this is a little bit more explanation about how our conscious and unconscious work and how they work together, and to give some hints about how we need to start working with these two parts of ourselves um, in order to kind of work with moving forward on things that have been problematic for us. And there's different ways of doing that. Hypnosis is one of my tools, because that whole process of getting the captain to kind of rationally explain and, you know, have a chart and, you know, run a video so that the crew gets all kind of reassured, that's a long kind of process. There's other processes that, like hypnosis, where we can communicate information faster. And that's how I look at hypnosis, is that, you know, it kind of opens up a communication channel to the unconscious mind, is able to just give information quickly. And one of the ways is through metaphors. And I've been using metaphors through this whole thing, this captain and crew ship. It helps us to understand a concept easily. So we understand the concept of, you know, conscious mind is like if you're first introduced, the unconscious and conscious mind, like the captain and crew of a cruise ship, is like, what the heck is that? But if you break it down and say, well, the conscious mind has these features like the captain, and the unconscious have these features like the crew, or that, you know, the unconscious is like the hard drive of a computer and the conscious is like the screen of the computer. These are metaphors that help the unconscious mind understand something quickly. It's like a word picture. And it says, oh, again, that pattern matching. Oh, this thing is like that thing. The captain and crew of a cruise ship is like the unconscious mind. Oh, I get it. We can draw a comparison so I understand. And so we can use metaphors in hypnosis to communicate information that can bring about changes quicker, because we can get the unconscious mind to update its files and get a new concept in through that process of hypnosis. So I guess that is all the time we have today. And yes, we're kind of, you know, tapping out almost at the half-hour mark. So I should wrap up. And we'll have lots to talk about in the future. I will be talking more about hypnosis. Maybe even do a little hypnosis demonstration next time or sometime. And but anyway, in the meantime, I'm hoping this is getting you a little bit more clarity about how we work, giving us a framework for understanding. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them either on the YouTube channel, or I'll post it on Facebook as well. And if you have any ideas for future topics, please let me know those as well. And so if you ask questions, I can take note of them and incorporate them into these and answer them at our next session. But anyway, thank you for joining me. And I hope that this has given you some food for thought, and it's just moving your idea about ourselves and getting some clarity for just a little bit more. Okay, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.